They said the Underground Railroad ran on secret tracks, coded songs, and safe houses hidden in forests and farmhouses. But beneath that familiar map lies another route, one of tide and keel, of charts and seaworthy courage. This is the story of a maritime underground railroad, a highly technical network that carried freedom seekers from southern ports to northern harbors, steered by Black Harbor pilots, sailors, and a web of anti-slavery allies who turned the Atlantic into a corridor of escape. Imagine Charleston in the antebellum era, a bustling port of masts and smoke, where the comings and goings of cargo ships were part of daily life. For enslaved people working in the docks or on nearby plantations, the harbor offered a dangerous opportunity. They watched the tides and the shipping manifests, learned the rhythms of incoming and outgoing vessels, and cultivated relationships with black men who knew the sea. Pilots who guided ships through shoals, deckhands who handled lines in the dark, and captains sympathetic to liberty. These maritime specialists possessed not only seamanship, but also the intimate technical knowledge needed to move vessels without drawing suspicion. That knowledge became the backbone of an underground naval system. Enslaved freedom seekers and their allies used a combination of overt commercial steamships and covert small craft. On busy steam packets and coasters, passengers and cargo blurred together. Manifests were dense and confusing, the perfect cover for a few steady hands and a well-placed story. Black sailors who had forged reputations for reliability could slip a stowaway into a hold or secure passage for a fleeing family by disguising them as ship labor or a day's passenger. The skill was in timing and paperwork, in using legal commerce as camouflage. But not every leg of the journey could rely on large steamers. The narrows, inlets, and tidal rivers leading away from Confederate and slaveholding ports required nimble craft. Small rowboats, skiffs, and sail tenders that could hug the shore, slip into marshes, and duck behind islands. Pilots versed in local currents read the moon and the river like a chart. They knew when an outgoing schooner would turn broadside to pass a buoy, when patrols would be lighter, and how to avoid the nets of slave catchers who peered into every shadow. These were not accidental maneuvers. They were planned naval operations, executed with a seaman's precision. Nonprofit anti-slavery networks, both black and white, stitched these movements into a larger strategy. Abolitionist newspapers and agents in northern ports coordinated with sympathetic captains, arranging for incoming ships to take on escapees under the guise of cargo or crew change. Religious and philanthropic societies in cities like New York, Philadelphia, and Boston provided safe harbor upon arrival, but they also furnished charts, maps of currents, and introductions to local mariners who could shepherd newcomers inland. The exchange of technical maritime intelligence, which harbors were least watched, where coaling happens at night, which pilots could be trusted, was as crucial as clandestine letters and quilts. The climax of these journeys often occurred under the veil of dawn. A small boat would glide into a northern estuary, the occupants exhausted and silent. A northern harbor pilot, perhaps black and proud of a dual identity as a veteran seaman and freedom ally, would guide them past customs and into a waiting berth. From there, a network of lawyers, ministers, and abolitionist agents would move the escaped individuals into legal havens where state laws shielded them from recapture, at least temporarily. This hidden naval mechanics of resistance reveals a different seam of the Underground Railroad, one defined by professional maritime skill, strategic use of commercial systems, and intimate knowledge of the sea. It reminds us that escape was not only an act of fleeing but an engineered campaign, relying on the expertise of men and women who turned ships into instruments of liberation. When we picture the courage of freedom seekers, we should also picture the charts, the helm, the pilot's steady hand, and the quiet oars cutting through early morning fog, all part of a network that made freedom possible by sea.